History loves to lie to us. It loves to take the most dangerous, brilliant, and utterly ruthless women and file down their edges until they fit into a neat, easily digestible little box. It loves to turn them into myths, because a myth is a fairy tale, and fairy tales can't hurt you. But Marie Laveau was no fucking fairy tale. Welcome back to Audacious History. Today, we are taking a trip to the sticky, malarial, bourbon-soaked swamps of 19th century New Orleans, a city built on slave labor, French aristocracy, Spanish architecture, and enough Catholic guilt to choke a priest. In the 1830s, this city was run by wealthy white men. Politicians, judges, plantation owners, and police chiefs who thought they owned the world and everyone in it. But they were wrong. The most powerful person in New Orleans wasn't a mayor. It wasn't a judge. It was a free woman of color. Marie Laveau is remembered as the Voodoo Queen of New Orleans. The tourist brochures will tell you she danced with snakes, sold love potions, and put hexes on people. And yeah, she did all that. But the magic, the gree-gree bags, the chanting, the altars, that was just the branding. That was the front. Marie Laveau's real audacity? She turned a hair salon into an intelligence-gathering operation that rivaled the fucking CIA. She used the dark, filthy secrets of the wealthy elite to essentially run a shadow government. She bypassed every racist, sexist law in the antebellum South, looked at the rigged system, and said, "I'm gonna own you motherfuckers." Here is how she did it. Before she was the undisputed queen of voodoo, Marie Laveau was a hairdresser. But she wasn't cutting hair in some storefront. She was a private stylist, making house calls to the grand mansions of the Beau Carré. Now, you have to understand the psychology of the antebellum elite. To the wealthy white women of New Orleans, a woman of color was effectively invisible. She was the furniture, a beast of burden. These women would sit at their velvet vanities for hours, completely disregarding the woman standing right behind them, running combs through their hair. And because Marie was invisible, these women talked. Good God, did they talk. When you think no one who matters is listening, the truth spills out. While Marie pinned up curls and massaged scalps, she listened to the wives of mayors, judges, and bankers spill every bit of rot hidden behind their grand mahogany doors. She heard about the judge who liked to beat his mistresses. She heard about the politician who was secretly bankrupt and embezzling from the city coffers. She heard about the police chief's raging syphilis. She learned who was sleeping with whom, who was paying off whom, and whose seemingly perfect Southern belle daughter was quietly being sent away to visit an aunt to hide a pregnancy. Marie didn't just passively listen. She cultivated this shit. She was charming, empathetic, a confidant. She would soothe these women, offer them a sympathetic ear, and quietly file every single piece of dirt into a mental steel trap. But Marie's genius didn't stop there. She knew that the wives only knew half the story. So she built a network. New Orleans was run on the backs of enslaved people and free people of color. Cooks, maids, carriage drivers, stable boys. The invisible workforce. Marie organized them. She paid them, or she offered them spiritual protection. And in return, they became her ears and eyes. If a politician had a secret meeting at midnight, Marie's network knew. If a wealthy merchant buried a lockbox in his courtyard, Marie's network knew. She possessed the most comprehensive database of blackmail material in the United States. And soon, it was time to weaponize it. By the 1930s, Marie Laveau transitions. She stops doing hair and opens her doors as a spiritual advisor, a voodoo practitioner. And who comes knocking? The exact same rich, desperate, narcissistic men whose wives she used to serve. Imagine this. A prominent lawyer comes to Marie in the dead of night. He's terrified. He's facing a massive lawsuit that will ruin him. He begs the Voodoo Queen for a spell, a hex, anything to make the opposing counsel drop the case. He hands over a stack of gold coins. Marie takes the money. She gives him a gree-gree bag, tells him to bury it in the graveyard at midnight, and promises him the spirits will handle it. But Marie doesn't rely on spirits. She relies on her files. She knows exactly who the opposing counsel is, and thanks to her hairdressing days and her servant spy network, she knows this opposing counsel is carrying on a torrid, illegal affair with another man. A crime that would result in total social and legal obliteration in 1835. So Marie pays the opposing counsel a visit. Or she sends a message, a quiet, terrifying little whisper in his ear. Drop the case, or the city learns where you spend your Thursday nights. The next day, the lawsuit is miraculously dropped. The lawyer who hired Marie thinks she is a dark goddess. He thinks she bent reality to her will. He tells all his rich, powerful friends, Marie Laveau's magic is real. It was real, all right. It just wasn't supernatural. It was pure, unadulterated, ruthless extortion. And it worked beautifully. Men came to her to win elections, to fix court cases, to eliminate business rivals. And Marie delivered. Through blackmail, bribery, and psychological warfare, she began pulling the strings of the entire city. But when you operate at that level, eventually someone is going to try and take you down. Which brings us to the confrontation that cemented her absolute dominance. It is 1842. The moral panic in Nolens is reaching a boiling point. The Catholic Church and certain factions of the city government are terrified of Marie's influence. The public rituals she holds at Lake Pontchartrain are drawing thousands. Black, white, rich, poor, they are all flocking to her. Judge Arthur Delacroix, a ruthless, aristocratic, racist piece of shit who prides himself on his iron grip over the French Quarter, decides he is going to be the man who breaks the Voodoo Queen. Delacroix isn't a man who asked nicely. He signs a warrant for her arrest on charges of witchcraft, unlawful assembly, and inciting slave rebellions, a charge that carries the death penalty. But instead of sending his deputies, Delacroix wants to look her in the eye. He wants to see her beg. So at 11 o'clock p.m., in the middle of a sweltering July thunderstorm, he kicks in the front door of her cottage on Rue St. Anne. The judge storms in, rain dripping from his heavy coat, his hand resting on the pistol at his belt. He looks at her with absolute disgust. "Get up, you fucking witch!" Delacroix spits, kicking a wooden stool out of the way. "Your reign of bullshit is over. I have a warrant for your arrest, and by Monday, I'm going to watch you hang in the square." Marie doesn't stand. She doesn't flinch. She just stares at him. The silence stretches out. 10 seconds. 20. Delacroix's face reddens. He hates that she isn't terrified. Finally, Marie leans forward, a snake shifting over her collarbone. Her voice is a low, raspy whisper that cuts right through the sound of the rain. "You came all this way in the mud, Arthur," she says. "And you didn't even bring your favorite whip. The one with the silver handle. The one you use on the girls down at Madame Duquesne's brothel." Delacroix freezes. His hand tightens on his pistol. "What the fuck did you just say to me?" Marie stands up slowly. The python slithers down to the floor. She walks toward him. She is shorter than him, but she suddenly seems to take up the entire room. "I said," Marie repeats, her voice turning into a serrated blade. I know about the whip, Arthur. I know about the little room in the basement of the brothel. I know you pay double if the girls are underage. And I know about the ledger you keep hidden behind the loose brick in your study. Delacroix takes a physical step back. His mouth opens, but no sound comes out. Marie closes the distance between them. She is inches from his face now. He can smell the rum and tobacco on her breath. You think you run this fucking city? She hisses. You think you have power because you sit behind a wooden bench and wear a robe? You are a pathetic, degenerate little boy playing dress-up, and I own you. She taps a heavy, leather-bound book sitting on her table. In this book is the exact amount you embezzled from the Levy Construction Fund, $22,000. I know the name of the bank in Boston where you hid it. I know that your wife's third child, the one with the dark hair, belongs to your brother. And I know about the dock worker you murdered in an alley in 1838 when he tried to collect the gambling debt you owed him. You shoved a blade into his ribs and threw him in the river. You paid the coroner $50 to call it a drowning. Delacroix is shaking. His grand crusade is disintegrating into dust. You can't prove any of that. You're a black woman. No court will take your word over mine. Marie lets out a sharp, bone-chilling laugh. Oh, Arthur, she purrs. I don't need a court. I'm not going to testify. If you don't burn that arrest warrant right now, tomorrow morning, copies of these documents will be delivered to the mayor. The original financial records will be delivered to your political rivals. The details of your brother's affair will be delivered to your wife. And the details of the murdered dock worker will be delivered to the Dock Workers Union, who, as you know, are very fond of dragging rich men out of their beds and beating them to death in the street. I don't need a judge, Marie whispers. I have the mob, and I have the truth, and I have your balls in a vice. Now, you have exactly 10 seconds to decide if you want to leave this house a judge or leave it a corpse. He burns it. He burns his own warrant. And as he backs away towards the door, completely broken, Marie delivers the final nail in the coffin. By the way, Arthur, she says brightly, your wife's hair is getting a bit dry. Tell her to try a little almond oil. I'll send some over on Tuesday. Delacroix flees into the rain. He never bothered her again. In fact, for the rest of his career, whenever Marie Laveau needed a favor in the courts, Judge Delacroix was the first one to bend over backward to grant it. She didn't just defeat him, she turned the man who came to hang her into her own personal lapdog. With the political and legal infrastructure of the city quietly tucked into her pocket, Marie Laveau's public power became absolute. She wasn't just surviving, she was thriving. She began hosting massive voodoo ceremonies in Congo Square and along the shores of Lake Pontchartrain on St. John's Eve. And I'm not talking about a few people in the woods. I'm talking about thousands of attendees. The audacity of this cannot be overstated. In the American South, it was illegal for large groups of black people to gather. The white establishment lived in constant, pants-shitting fear of slave uprisings. Gatherings with drums and religious fervor were usually crushed instantly by the militia. But Marie's gatherings? The police didn't shut them down. The police actually provided her with security. The mayor's office issued her a permit. Why? Because half the police force was terrified she would put a hex on them, and the other half was being directly paid off by her or blackmailed by her. The wealthy white elites would actually drive their carriages to the edge of the ceremonies to watch in morbid, terrified fascination. They thought they were watching a dark, mystical ritual. They thought they were watching a woman commune with the devil. What they were actually watching was the biggest flex in American history. They were watching a black woman in the antebellum South publicly parade her immunity. She was essentially standing in front of a giant bonfire, looking at the white establishment and saying, "I am untouchable and you know it." Marie Laveau lived to be an old woman. She never faced trial. She was never executed. She maintained her grip on New Orleans until the day she died. Even in death, she remains undefeated. Today, if you visit her tomb in St. Louis Cemetery No. 1, you will find it covered in X's, marks left by tourists and politicians alike, still begging the Voodoo Queen for favors. People still think she was magic, and maybe she was, but the truth is infinitely more badass than the myth. Marie Laveau didn't need to summon demons to conquer New Orleans. She knew that the scariest, most dangerous monsters in the world weren't spirits from the underworld. They were the greedy, corrupt, arrogant men running the city. And she knew that the only way to beat a monster is to hold a mirror up to its face, trap it in its own filth, and pull the fucking strings. She didn't use a magic wand to break the patriarchy. She used a pair of hairdressing shears and an encyclopedic knowledge of their sins. Thank you for joining me on Audacious History. If you enjoyed the story of the woman who hacked the 19th century, hit that like button, subscribe, and leave a comment down below telling me which audaciously dangerous figure from history I should cover next. Until next time, stay audacious and never tell your secrets to the person cutting your hair.